Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is December 10th. We're in double digits. And John, I have to apologize. I've made a major screw up this morning, and I have a major problem with the computer system. And you know what? You know where the blame falls, John?
Does it fall on Mark McCloskey?
No, it falls on me. It's my screw up. I totally screwed things up. That's why the beginning of the show was all messed up. And that's why I didn't have any Fox News or any ads or anything like that.
You're agile, though, Brad. And I know you've got the recorder going. So no matter what happens, you'll clean it up for Apple Podcasts and for YouTube, won't you?
Yes. Like I do all the time. I take all of John's misogynistic comments out and his narcissistic comments and things like that. By the way, I'm still
And then there's nothing left, Brad. If you remove the narcissism and the misogyny, there's really nothing I have to say.
Okay. First off, I have to tell you, and I'm sorry that I didn't bring this up yesterday. I was in a hurry to get out of here. But today in the C block, we have Jason Law, who is the candidate for St. Charles County County Executive. And if you remember, he was scheduled to be my guest host while you took those days off. And I had Steve Ellman on, I had Bill Eigel on, and I was supposed to have Jason Law. And the morning he was supposed to be on, he got sick. He couldn't do it. So we rescheduled it, and he was supposed to be on, I guess, the week before last. And I got sick and wasn't here that morning. So we've got him on this morning. So that'll be in C block. So just to give you a heads up on that. Okay.
Fantastic. That's great to hear, Brad.
Yes. And the question I'm going to ask him right off the bat is, what's your real name? Jason Law can't be your real name, I think he's a colonel now in the St. Louis County Police. He's way up the food chain there. So it can't be his real name. Just like the sheriff in St. Clair County, Illinois, for a long time, his name was Merle Justice. Now, there's no way that's his real name, but that was his real name, Merle Justice. Isn't that
Justice for sheriff? Like, think of the
Yes.
think of the fun you could have with that.
Oh, right.
Law for county executive, right?
Well, law for county police chief. That would be the thing there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
Good job, Brad.
Okay. That is John Combest, Combest. Every single day of his life, he put together this incredible website which features all these important things you should know that's going on in the state of Missouri. Not the most fancy site. Matter of fact, it's sort of, what version of web is this, John?
0.0.
And John unabashedly brags about the fact that his website could have been viewed in 2004, and it would look pretty much the same as it does today, right?
That's exactly right, Brad. Or 2001. Nate, pick your date, Brad.
It never changes, which is good because it's fast loading and you can get to the stuff very quickly, and it's a very efficient website. So what we do is, in this show, we bring in this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he counts down what John believes are the top 3 of all the things on johncombest.com. And we start with...
In third place...
It's certainly not every day, every week, or every month that the Post-Dispatch editorial board finds it in their Scrooge-like heart to show praise and appreciation for a Republican. But that's what they did this morning with State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick. What did Fitzpatrick do so correctly, so appropriately, to earn the begrudging praise of the Post-Dispatch editorial board? Well, he said all this secrecy at the Francis Howell School District and from the Francis Howell School Board needs to end now. And a story that you and I, have discussed extensively, Brad. The St. Charles County's Francis Howell School District made a huge payout to a gentleman that had been hired as superintendent that never actually served as superintendent. So why in the heck was this guy given roughly $250,000 to just go away? Nobody will say, because there have been non-disclosure agreements signed. But I'm stepping on the rest of the story, Brad. Let me begin with just the opener from the editorial itself. Parents in the Francis Howell School District might finally soon get some answers regarding the school board's unexplained 6-figure payout to a former superintendent who never worked a day there. If so, they will be getting that information not courtesy of board members, but in spite of them. The editorial goes on to cite news coverage from the Post-Dispatch of how Fitzpatrick was compelled last week to subpoena the board to turn over some of these records. Now, you and I have discussed this at length, Brad. And so presuming that most folks are familiar with the basics of this, I'll go ahead and get to the end of the editorial here. In any case, Fitzpatrick and his auditors presumably aren't bound by the prohibition of non-disclosure agreements. And earlier in this editorial, the Post-Dispatch mentioned that non-disclosure agreements are fine in the corporate world, in the private sector, but when it comes to taxpayer money, taxpayers deserve some transparency here. The editorial continues, barring limited and specific instances of legitimately private information, the investigation in this case must finally provide the public with some answers about why this public entity spent that much money without an eon of explanation. Heaven knows the board members aren't going to do it willingly. So here we have the Post-Dispatch editorial board praising Scott Fitzpatrick. You and I mentioned how grateful we are as taxpayers. And even though we might not pay taxes at the moment in the Francis Howell School District, if I was a parent living in the Francis Howell School District, I would certainly want to know why the heck we spent all this money to have this guy never show up for a day for work.
It's a crazy story, and I won't go into my dissertation about all the crazy, weird stuff going on with the superintendents in the St. Louis area, St. Charles County, and around the country, Des Moines, Iowa, for one of them. I just don't understand that, John. Is Fitzpatrick essentially saying that the Sunshine Law does not apply here, or it does apply here? Has he come out and said anything about that?
I don't know if he's used the phrase Sunshine Law. I think he says in the powers vested in him as state auditor, I need to see your documents that show why you gave this guy so much money. Was it an HR issue? Did you fail to do your due diligence? And Brad, you and I have beaten that to death. But did the district not do its due diligence before it hired the guy, realized there was a problem with the dude, and then said, okay, we committed to pay you a bunch of money. Here's some money. Go away. We'll just hire a new guy.
And then the crazy thing is, 4 days later, he gets a job as an assistant superintendent from some district. What was it, Oklahoma or Kansas or something like that?
Oklahoma, yeah, to use an overdone phrase, Brad, that's falling upwards, right?
Man, I don't know.
Failing in one job
Yes.
and then being promoted.
So he's probably making, probably high 180s or something like that, maybe low 200s in the Oklahoma school assistant superintendent. So essentially for 2025, he's pulling down $500,000 or close to it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
it's a pretty good deal, Brad. Pretty good work if you can get it.
Man, I'll tell you what. Okay.
Hey, but you know what? People in our education system are underpaid, Brad. Radically underpaid. In fact, there's not a guy on the radio that frequently cites Dave Ramsey. You know who's not citing Dave Ramsey? The subject of story number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
A headline from our local Washington, Missourian paper. East Central College receives federal grant to aid low-income and first-generation students. Now, if I recall correctly, a gentleman who's on between 7 and 8 a.m. on Westplex Talk 104.5, whose name is not John Combest, smartened me up about Metallica giving out some scholarships to East Central College students. Wasn't that right, Brad?
Yes, it's a fascinating story. They've given out quite a few scholarships, and they do this all over the country, and it's mainly for trade schools, for junior colleges that teach trades, welding, all sorts of stuff like that.
And so it's a barrage of good news for folks if you're at East Central, or maybe even if you're just an administrator there, because the federal government, and this is the Federal Department of Education, has been awarded what's called a TRIO Student Support Services Grant to strengthen academic and personal support. I'm guessing that's like guidance counselor stuff for students who face barriers to completing college. So the program will serve first-generation students, those from low-income households, and students with disabilities. The grant is administered by the U.S. Department of Education. Now, Brad, I mentioned the story, and I put it in the top 3. If you go to johncombest.com today, it's not at the top of my list of federal links, because statewide, it probably doesn't have that big of implications. But I wanted to mention it with you, not just because of the local angle right here in our broadcast area, but also I keep hearing from progressives and even some left-leaning moderates that the Trump administration hates education. They hate low-income people. They hate people with disabilities. And now we have a grant coming from the Trump Department of Education that's explicitly to help low-income households, students with disabilities, and first-generation college students. Isn't that curious to you, Brad?
You know, if it's not the Epstein files, and if it's not we gave them a second tap to the drug guys coming up from Venezuela, it's this kind of stuff that Trump just can't deal with lower class people, and he doesn't like people that have disabilities, and he doesn't like LGBTQIA people. I'm going like, give me a break, you know. I mean,
I know, like if he saw you, Brad, a man with a lot of disabilities,
yes.
not all of them you can even see physically.
Mental disabilities.
He would say, sir, why are you parking so far back in the parking lot to walk? And then you could explain that you try to get 73,000 steps a day.
It's 74,000, John.
That's right. And you know what they say, 74,000 steps a day keeps the gallbladder surgeon away.
I've got updates.
And you can give us an update on that in B Block, Brad.
I won't. But if you really want me, I will. Okay, we ready for number one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Boy, we're just charging right through this morning, aren't we? Okay, here we go.
We are.
The number one.
I wanted to save a little time for story number one today. You frequently cite James Carville, the Ragin' Cajun. You're a big fan of James Carville, aren't you, Brad?
I've always found him interesting. I think because he's sort of a average kind of guy. He's interesting in the respect that he's a brilliant politician, a brilliant tactician is the word I was looking for. And yet, when you hear him talk, you wonder if he knows how to put his shoes on the right feet. You know what I'm saying?
I think he's at the age where he probably just wears Skechers. I think he probably just slides shoes on his feet at this age, Brad. I'm getting there myself. I shouldn't poke fun. I bring up James Carville, though, because I read a lot of what James Carville writes from back in the late 1990s even. I love reading what he has to say about stuff. And he wrote a book in the early 2000s with Paul Begala. Do you remember Paul Begala, too,
Oh,
Brad?
yeah. I heard him on the radio just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he still has a presence in terms of Democratic politics. So anyway, they wrote a book together. They had teamed up on a number of campaigns in the early 90s. I believe they even worked together prior to working for Clinton in 91 and 92. But they wrote a book in the early 2000s called Buck Up, Suck Up, and Come Back When You Foul Up. So it was a witty book based on campaign lessons. And I want to read two paragraphs real quick, Brad. Back in the early presidential campaign of Clinton, Paul Begala was talking to a reporter, and an opponent of Bill Clinton is a guy named Paul Tsongas. I think Tsongas was from Massachusetts. Anyway, he was a big kind of a progressive opponent to Clinton. And Paul Begala is talking with a reporter, and they're just having a conversation. And Paul calls him an SOB. Paul Begala calls Paul Tsongas an SOB. Well, the reporter does what any good national reporter does, and doesn't leave it off the record, puts it in black and white in a newspaper. So I'll pick up where Carville and Begala describe the story. Clinton asked Paul if he'd said it. Paul assured him that he had, but naively hoped the reporter would clean up the language. Clinton took two measures in response to the error. First, he ordered Paul to send a handwritten letter of apology to Tsongas. Then, once Paul had done that, Clinton threw his arm around him and said, listen, everybody makes mistakes. I don't want you to let this take you out of the game. I like that you're in there swinging for me. And Paul, Begala, and James Carville go on to say, rather than being disheartened, Paul was ready to run through a wall for Clinton all over again. Then they make like a little joke there. And then they go on to say, every other person in the campaign, if Clinton had reacted negatively or harshly, every other person in the campaign with an aggressive attitude would have been shilled into inaction. Creating a gun-shy culture is not the way to win. I thought of this story this weekend, Brad, and I was hoping, and I'm still continuing to hope, that this is the kind of conversation that has been had in the last few days in the office of Ann Wagner. Did you hear about Ann Wagner's tweet over the weekend, Brad, or last week, Brad?
I did not.
Okay, someone who works for Ann Wagner, and specifically, I'm guessing on Ann Wagner's campaign. Now, I'm picturing a 22-year-old, maybe a 23-year-old, somebody that puts together some social media content, maybe in Missouri, maybe at a campaign consultant firm in D.C., maybe at a campaign consultant firm, I don't know, in Tennessee. Ann Wagner's got consultants all over the country that do content and fundraising and campaign consulting for her. Ann Wagner's Twitter account, whoever is managing her Twitter account, had what has been considered a misfire because there's a paper in Missouri called the California Democrat. It's in Montague County, right? Kind of mid-Missouri. And they covered a rally that was against Missouri's redistricting plan. Now, Brad, I didn't mention redistricting in the top three. You can feel free to do so in B Block. We've beaten it to death. There were several updates. They're all on johncombest.com today. But the California Democrat had a piece about a small group of citizens had a rally against the redistricting map. And someone from Ann Wagner's campaign saw that piece in the California Democrat, saw the name, and said something to the effect of, you know, it doesn't matter what California Democrats have to say about a Missouri map. I'm paraphrasing here. I don't have it right in front of me at this moment, Brad, but said something to the effect of, hey, we don't care what California Democrats think about our map. Now, this was a blunder because California is a city in Missouri. And as you can expect, Democrats pounced. If that happened, if a Democrat had done that, if whoever manages the Twitter account of octogenarian Emmanuel Cleaver had made a mistake like this, Republicans would have pounced as well. We would have jumped all over the kid that does the social media for Emmanuel Cleaver, just like Democrats are jumping all over whatever kid does the social media account for Ann Wagner. So it's silly that whoever works for Ann's campaign is in charge of Twitter made this mistake. It's silly that the kid made this mistake. And as you can expect, Democrats are having a heyday with it. How does Ann Wagner not know that California is a city in Missouri? And it underscores what Democrats are always saying about Ann Wagner, which is that she's out of touch, which is that she spends too much time in D.C. Now, Brad, point of fact, Ann Wagner was elected chair of the Missouri Republican Party in 1999. Ann spent countless hours at rubber chicken dinners in California, Missouri, at Montague County, Lincoln Days, listening to candidates in the dark days of the Republican era talk about how they were going to win. We're going to run a grassroots campaign. Sure you are, idiot. And you're going to lose to the Democrat 60-40. So Ann certainly knows where Montague County is. She knows that California is a city in Missouri. I would dare say, Brad, and I hope no one gets mad at me about this, I doubt Ann Wagner knows what her Twitter password is. And if you pressed her on it, I doubt she could tell you the last 10 things that have been tweeted from her Twitter account, right? Like Ann Wagner is not concerned with what's going up on her Twitter. But somebody on her campaign made a mistake, is paying the price for it. I'm sure it's been the worst week of their brief political career, whoever did it. And I'm sure people are razzing them and giving them a hard time. So my suggestion, Brad, is that if I worked for Ann and whether I knew this person, let's say this person is local in St. Louis, at the holiday party, I would throw my arm around him, just like Bill Clinton did to Paul Begala years ago, and say, hey, kid, we all make mistakes, whether it's a man or a female. If it's a female, you probably can't throw your arm around him. But you throw your arm around him, you say, hey, kid, we all make mistakes. Then what I do, Brad, if I work for Ann, this Christmas season, I put together a little basket this week. I order a nice shirt from the University of California. You know, the California Bears have some pretty cool looking merch. I get a cool California shirt. I maybe get some California wine. I get a little Ghirardelli chocolate. Maybe I get some California raisins. And I put a little basket together. I smarten up the boss. I smarten up Ann Wagner about it. I arrange for Ann to actually give the basket to the kid. You know, make the kid think that it was Ann's idea, that Ann's an empath and cares and all that stuff. And then I throw my arm around the kid and I say, kid, it happens. And quote Bill Clinton, say, I'm glad you're out there swinging for me. We all make mistakes. Keep at it, kid.
Do you really think she has no idea what her Twitter password is?
Of course, Brad. You think Ann Wagner knows what she's tweeted in the last 6 months?
Nah, I think she's more aware of it than you say. I really do.
Yeah, and Brad, who do you think knows Ann Wagner better?
Chris Cook?
Anyway, I don't mean that. Maybe Ann Wagner, who has been in Congress for quite a while, who's been in politics for quite a while, maybe she sits at her laptop, Brad, and she scrolls Twitter all day. Or maybe she's a member of Congress and she pays attention to her duties and she's going into the Christmas season and she's thinking about what to get her grandkids. Now, I will point out, Brad, that there are elected officials, and I won't mention anyone's name, who are aware, who not only are aware of what is going on social media, but who actually run their own social media accounts and are pretty active online. I think that definitely does happen. But if you think, number one, if you think that Ann Wagner, and what I like about this story, Brad, here's the silver lining of this. Ann is in a position where Ann could, if Ann was going Sherman's March to the Sea, she could say, look, idiots, I obviously don't manage my own Twitter. Some 22-year-old kid in Tennessee or DC or an intern in my St. Louis office accidentally made a mistake. I don't manage my Twitter. I obviously know where California is. This 22-year-old kid made a mistake, right? But Ann's not going to throw her staff under the bus.
How do you know
She's got a spokesman named Arthur Bryant. And Brad, Arthur Bryant has surely heard all of your stupid barbecue jokes, right? I mean, if your name is Arthur Bryant, you've heard them all. But Arthur Bryant put out a statement I thought that was succinct. And he said, obviously, Ann knows where California, Missouri is. So, Brad, a staffer made a mistake. And if I'm a Democrat, I'm going to make hay about it. And I'm going to use it in a fundraising email. And I'm going to use it on social media to get a little bit of attention. And good for them. That's what they should do.
Do you know?
But Ann Wagner knows where California, Missouri is. And Ann Wagner is not sitting, and I'll be careful the words I use here, Brad. Ann Wagner's not the type of woman to go thumb love her phone. You know what I'm saying? Ann's not doing a lot of scrolling at the age of whatever she is.
Do you know that Arthur Bryant married a woman? He's from Kansas City. He married a woman in St. Louis, Julie Emo, and they moved.
Oh, that's funny, Brad. You know what? There's a chance that Arthur Bryant, the man who works for Ann Wagner, hasn't heard that. That's quite creative, Brad. You know, growing up with a last name that looks like Combest, I'm pretty empathetic to last name puns.
Well, they got married and they moved to Columbia and they opened up a barbecue pizza restaurant. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
no, it's hilarious, Brad. You know what though? It's a shame nobody calls you Pappy.
And you know what? Have you ever eaten at Pappy's before?
Yeah, I've had it. It's fine.
Boy, you and I have the same opinion on that. To me, it's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's you gotta like it. Like, isn't it black owned? Isn't that the gimmick? Like, oh, support a black restaurant.
No, it's actually owned by a bunch of Jewish guys.
Is it really?
No, I don't know.
I thought it was Asian women.
No, I don't know.
Anyway, I tried it. I thought it was fine. Like, yeah. I'm not a big barbecue guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, give me some lean barbecued chicken. But I'm not going to go eat a bunch of fatty ribs. And also go to a barbecue place and look around. Do you see the kind of people that sit around eating barbecue every day?
Yeah, I do. And they weigh more than me, and that's not good. Okay, we have to take a break.